Okay, so Tara, yesterday, you and so many people, myself included, we had strong reactions to Trump's, typically deranged rant about supposed cocaine that was discovered in the White House. Now, first, he claimed that it belonged to both Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, right? Then decided that Special Prosecutor Jack Smith was a crackhead. In response, you wrote the following, and I quote, "The mainstream media is just going to let this insanity slide? Trump's behavior is insane. The rantings of a deranged lunatic, and all we get is a collective shrug. Normalizing Trump's lunacy puts our entire democracy in peril." Now, I'm curious what it was about this rant versus the daily barrage of stupidity and lunacy that made you especially angry.
Well, because he gets away with stuff that the rest of us wouldn't. And now when we start to get into outside of the political arena, which is often subjective, we're in the legal arena now. And he is accused of very serious crimes. And the fact that someone who, it's bad enough that he was elected president of the United States the first time, but now he's running again. He's the front runner for the president of the United States, the most powerful position in the world. And he's ranting against a special prosecutor like a lunatic, saying things, making accusations about cocaine use, calling him a crackhead. These are the rantings of a lunatic. And it just gets a shrug. No one seems to care anymore. And I worry that we become so normalized to this, desensitized to this, and it's been normalized so much that people just shrug it off. And yeah, that's just another Donald Trump rant. No, we can. It would be different if he was just sitting in his Bedminster or Mar-a-Lago resorts, just eating well-done cheeseburgers and steaks with ketchup and not doing anything other than ranting on Twitter. That would still be or Truth Social, whatever it's called. That would still be alarming enough, but you could just be like, eh. But he's literally actively running to be president of the United States again and making these outrageous statements that go against our judicial establishment, our law and order, our democratic norms. So things like that, it irks me more because it's like, are we not seeing this? Are we not watching what this guy's saying and doing? This is insane. This is nuts. Stop normalizing it. We can't ignore it.
Yeah. So for me, I was especially angered by this rant because, as I had stated on an earlier podcast, we were talking about the drug situation that's going on right now in America. I have two incredibly close friends who died of overdoses. Both happened to have been on opioids, but one of them who, when I say that he died, his body is not dead. Unfortunately, he is completely void of any brain function. And
I'm very sorry.
He was sad. A significant, he was my best friend since the age of 5. It's not something that you make fun of. Nobody
Correct.
would be making fun of this if it was happening during your administration. And it just lacks any sensitivity to what Joe Biden went through, having to deal with a son who is suffering from an addiction. All right. And, it's cruel. It lacks empathy. But then again, you're so right. We have normalized Trump's stupid behavior. Mm-hmm. And I keep thinking to myself, where are the people around him that are supposed to be taking care of him? If I was still in that orbit, I would have said to him, abso-fucking-lutely not.
Well, would he have listened?
Sometimes yes. Sometimes yes, but the problem is the Boris the idiot Epsteins and then this Walt Nada and, Dan Scavino,
He's still around?
Fucking caddy caddy who turned, general manager of Trump Briarcliff Manor to all of a sudden now assistant deputy chief of staff.
Yeah, it's nuts.
I mean, give me a fucking break. And the reason that they have become where they are is because they don't challenge him. They don't say, boss, you can't do that. It's cruel. It's wrong. It lacks presidential sort of appearance. It's everything that you would slap your kid if they said that to somebody in school, but we've just accepted, and we accept it on a daily basis, right?
Yeah. Well, doesn't that epitomize Trump? Everything you just said and everything that post represents, it's a microcosm of who he is. And it's a microcosm of who he has shown us he is and who his record shows us he is. And he's gotten away with it his entire freaking life. That's what's so frustrating about watching this whole thing unfold. It's like, and God bless Mary Trump. I love her. And she wrote a great book. And that book gave a lot of insight, I think, into why Trump is the way he is from his childhood, his relationship with his dad and his mom and his siblings and all of that. It was really insightful coming from a fellow family member. And I think about a lot of the different scenarios that she writes about in her book when Trump acts out like this. And I'm like, that's great. But like the rest of us, the world shouldn't have to be held hostage because a man-child never fully developed because of his dysfunctional relationship, because he had a bastard father and a mother who couldn't care less about her kids either and died young. And so he's angry at the world and trying to prove something. And we're all held hostage as a result of it. And an entire Republican Party has acquiesced to his malignant narcissism and put the entire democracy at risk because of it. It's hard to fathom. And your point about the insensitivity to the drug issue is actually a good one too, because the first thing I thought of after I thought about, like, is this guy serious calling the special counsel a crackhead and making these wild accusations, was, have you checked on your own son lately? I mean, Are we kidding me?
I was going to get into that.
Don
I was going to get into
Jr.?
that because,
Come on.
I mean, look, of the 3 kids, I would say that I was closest with Don. And, Don has been very open about alcoholism, the way he used to party when he was younger, and so on. And his ex-wife, Vanessa, really kept him on the straight and narrow.
Mm-hmm.
And now I see Don Jr., and I talked last week to Aubrey O'Day about it, and she had a lot to say, which was crazy. But
yeah, that made some serious
I'm
headlines.
not going to make the statement that Don Jr. is enjoying the Peruvian marching powder or anything like that. But one thing I will say, and I will say with certainty, that there's something going on.
I would say
the glassiness in his eyes, that's not from contact lenses.
No.
All right. The
slurred
rantings,
speech. Mm-hmm.
the slurred speech, the constant use of the hands, and so there's definitely something that's going on after hours there between him and Kimberly Gargoyle. All right?
Oh my God. Or maybe during hours.
Sure.
I'm not so sure. But the point is here that it's like, it's obvious. I mean, it really upsets me when the right and the Trump folks, the MAGAs, go after Hunter Biden relentlessly like this over his struggles with addiction. And because it's like, how many people in MAGA world and from the places they come from have family members who struggle with opioid addiction or who have done things that they're not proud of to further their habits. It's rampant in this country. And I knew that when Joe Biden decided to run for president, that his campaign had to come up with a strategy to kind of cut them off at the pass, because Hunter was always a liability, unfortunately. And the thing about it, though, is that Hunter Biden is a private fucking citizen. He is not running for office. He did not have a security clearance to work in the White House. He was not a public servant. He is a private citizen. Did he use his family name to profit? Probably. Like 95% of children of political figures or of people who have stature. That's the American way. Okay. Was it right? Is it unethical? That's a different discussion. Is it illegal? So far, there's been a nothing burger there. But they have zeroed in on his vices that he has tried and struggled with over the years, and how he now is back on the straight and narrow, it seems, in such a cruel way that completely dismisses the struggles that millions of families have endured with a family member or a loved one that's had addiction or lost someone to addiction. And the Biden campaign, I was saying this during 2020 that they needed to get out in front of it, and so that every time that the MAGAs or the right-wing media went after Hunter in such a cruel way, that people were just like, you know what, you guys are assholes. Like, cut it out. And I didn't know if they were aggressive enough necessarily. And I think that was to the frustration maybe of Hunter's team, which is why when he went out and did that interview during the 2020 campaign on his own, that unvarnished interview where he talked, very candidly about what he went through and acknowledged it, that was a good offense for them. And I think from outside of the shittiness of the MAGA world, I think most Americans look at that situation and go, enough, cut it out. Like, Hunter Biden had issues. He got his life together. His father loves him and has tried to be there for him. And that's it. If he's done something illegal, then charge him. If he hasn't, move on. And they just really look desperate because they don't have anything else. They have nothing else. So they just exploit the Hunter Biden situation. Meanwhile, Don Jr. is clearly in some type of spiral and desperately needs an intervention, but they don't give a shit about that.
Yeah, look, it's not that every family has some story as it relates to drug addiction. There's not a single American that doesn't know somebody, whether it's a family member or a friend.
Correct.
That has
unfortunately
either a drug addiction or unfortunately is right and or has passed as a direct result of drug addiction. And the lack of empathy that Donald is showing towards the Biden family, the lack of respect and acknowledgement of how hard it must be as a parent who cares about their kid to see and not be able to just, as a parent, to cure the issue, because that's what we want to do as parents. We don't want our kids to even have a cold, let alone a drug addiction, and to make fun of it, and then to impose that addiction onto the president of the United States, and to impose it upon a prosecutor that's kicking your fat fucking ass up and down Worth Avenue in Palm Beach every fucking day, all right? And so this is a man who is spiraling himself out of total control. However, on top of all of this crazy shit, he's raising even more money.
It's insane, Michael.
He's raising more money. What the fuck is going on here? And I got to tell you something, because the Lincoln Project, to which you are obviously a major part of,
thank you.
The sad thing is that the Biden administration, in my estimation, didn't really come out with a good enough counter.
I agree with you.
All right. How about you start showing some video of people standing in front of methadone clinics? How about families burying their children or the funerals of friends and loved ones and so on, and say, this is an American struggle. This is, unfortunately, not the only big killer of Americans, like guns. All right.
Right.
This is a real problem. Fentanyl in this country is a real fucking problem. And instead of doing that and saying, for Donald Trump to say the things that he's saying about my son demonstrates that he's a coward, that he is an asshole, right? I mean, be
unfit.
Be straightforward.
Again,
America
right,
would
unfit.
appreciate it.
I think I agree with you. And obviously at the Lincoln Project, we have no problem going on offense. That's what we do. And it's clear that Lincoln Project needs to exist because Democrats don't seem to have that gene. It's just not in their DNA to punch back hard. And so it's frustrating for those of us who understand this playbook and know how to go after the bully. You have to go on offense. I say this all the time. Defense may win championships. Offense wins elections. And by now, you would think that the Biden world would realize that when they go low, we go high. God bless Michelle Obama, but that does not work with these people. That only works when you are acting against good faith opponents. These are not good faith actors. These are horrible, despicable deplorables, as Hillary Clinton said and was excoriated for, but actually turned out to be correct. You've got to call it for what it is. You've got to play the game you're in. You cannot keep using communication strategies from election yesteryear. Okay, what worked in the 80s, 90s,
in
2000s,
1950 when people had respect.
Work. Even 10 years ago, it was during the Obama times, things started to get a little rough and tumble. But at least the Obama folks understood how to punch back. Now, the Biden folks, I appreciate the wisdom and the class and the decency of Joe Biden, his family, and the administration. However, you have to have surrogates. You maintain the dignity of the White House. You don't want to become what you despise. But that's what surrogates are for. That's what super PACs are for. That's what your allies out there are for. They should be marching in lockstep, unified on a positive message, praising what Joe Biden is doing. And also every single time that they talk about what a great job Joe Biden's actually doing as president, contrast it with the nonsense that's coming out of Trump world and what the Republicans are doing. For the love of God, why don't they? What you just said about showing images of the struggles of what opioid addiction looks like, what meth, being on meth or fentanyl, or kids in high school ODing, and the fact that we have to arm our local police departments and high school nurses with Narcan because it's such a problem, all the way down to junior high school in some places. They should be showing those images. The American people have a very short attention span. And unfortunately, in this day and age of social media and shock and awe television and reality TV and social media, people have to sometimes be shocked into paying attention. And be armed with the facts. Don't just do things that are like the MAGAs do, like the right wing does. They lie and they manipulate and they use propaganda. Don't do that. Use the truth and show people this is the real thing going on here. And this is what this jerk off is making fun of. This isn't a game. Right. Believe me, I'm with you on that.
But this is a little different. Tara, this is a little bit different because, like I said, the one thing that Trump does and does well, he takes an issue that everybody knows exists. Mm-hmm. Immigration, right? Whatever the issue might be. And he makes a statement about it, which has a hair of truth and accuracy to it, but then he distorts it for his own purpose. Here, like I said before, there is not an American that doesn't know somebody who is either using drugs, somebody who is a drug addict, who's a recovering drug addict, or who has passed away as a result of drugs. So if, like Lincoln Project, put out a proper ad, and it really, in my opinion, should come from the Biden administration.
It should.
Not from anybody else. I'm a father. First and foremost, hi, this is Joe Biden, and I'm president of the United States of America. But you know what else I am? I'm a father. I'm a father to a wonderful, wonderful young man, Hunter Biden. But Hunter had a problem. Now, what caused the problem? I don't know. Maybe it was the death of his brother. Maybe it was the death of his of his sister, his mother, whatever it might be, right? And really hit the core of what it's all about, because every single person watching will be able to relate in some way, shape, or form and say, for another person to make fun of, to put down, to denigrate, is that really who we are? Is that really what we are as a country? And then he should do like I do on my political beatdown. Give him the 2 fucking finger salute and say, look right into the camera and say, Donald, you're a fucking disgrace. All right? But I want to jump onto something, because yesterday, you posted the latest video from the Lincoln Project, and it goes into what we're talking about, which stated that Trump's biggest scam to date is suckering his own followers in continuing to give him money. Now, this comes on the heels of a report from Politico and from CNN Politics and so on that Trump raised $35 million in the second quarter, almost doubling his first quarter take. I think his first quarter was like 18.8 million. So this raises this raises the very real possibility that all of this is nothing more than some sick and elaborate charade to siphon money from the working class Americans.
Hasn't it always been about that, Michael?
I'm sorry?
Hasn't it always really been about that? From the very beginning?
Sure, but you think? So, Tara, could the first reality TV president just be playing a part for the sake of lining his pockets? Do me a favor. Give me your opinion.
Oh, 100%. Michael, you were there back in 2014, 15, and prior to that, when he was flirting with the idea of running, it was all about a big marketing scheme for himself to enrich himself. He never thought he was actually going to win. And then he won. And it was like, oh my God. And then it was like, okay, well, what do we do now? And you look at what they try to do with business interests overseas, and what happened with Ivanka and her Chinese patents, and Jared and his $2 billion from the Saudis. And all of this was to enhance the Trump brand. And obviously it has hurt him considerably, because now he was under more scrutiny. And people were like, yeah, we don't quite like you anymore. He had to sell the Trump Hotel in DC, and his brand is fledgling now.
And made like $200 million on it, by the way.
I know, it's nuts. It's nuts. But this is always what it's been about. He's hawked all of these con man products, right? From Trump steaks to Trump water to the vodka to the airlines. I mean, he's always been like a late night infomercial con man in a terribly fitted suit with that hair. And it's worked for him. He's been a showman. And now he has suckered millions and millions of Americans into believing that he is their vessel. He's their savior. He's their spokesperson, that he is their representative. If I give him credit for anything, it's his ability to convince people that he is one of them, and that he is he's their champion. That has got to be one of the biggest scams ever pulled in the history of this country, to watch this. And how many people, this goes to show how desperate and sad and lacking so many Americans are, that they would turn to a fucker like Donald Trump as their champion. And that, I think volumes will be written about the sociology behind how he pulled this off. But the amount of money, not only is he suckering these people out of their hard-earned money, but he's also cost them their lives. How many Americans died from COVID that didn't have to, because of his bullshit and because of the nonsense that he put out there? I mean, it's infuriating. It's more than just money. It costs people lives. There's blood on his hands. And yet, the Republican Party, the leaders, right-wing media, and even mainstream media at this point gives him a pass to a certain degree, where they don't remind people of this. They don't constantly remind the normal Americans out there, where there's a lot more of us than there are of the wackos. But the wackos are louder as of right now. And we can't allow that. We cannot allow that dynamic We keep doing that. And then that's how the wackos win. And we can't let that happen because, again, it goes back to our earlier conversation about normalizing Trump's cruelty and normalizing all of that. The fact that he's raising this amount of money and that they feel it's had the opposite effect. We thought that the legal trouble and the indictments, the Espionage Act, these are very serious things. And then obviously the erratic behavior, that there would be an exhaustion and people would finally go, you know what? We've had enough of this. We've had enough. It hasn't. It's turned them around to say, oh, the deep state now is going after our guy. We're digging in and we're going to support him even more. What? Cognitive dissonance is a hell of a drug. I say it all the time. It's hard to break. How do you break the pattern?
Really tough. Look, this sort of shit's been going on for a long, long time. I've said to you and I've said to many of my other guests that in 2015, when we first started the campaign, that Donald's famous line was going to be, this is going to be the greatest political infomercial in the history of U.S.
How about
politics.
That?
And that's exactly what we're getting. But the craziest thing is how Donald has the ability to create these cult followers.
Yes.
Now, going back into like the 1800s, or even going back to the Bible, Satan was always deemed to be a fallen angel. And you may remember, for example, in the movie The Usual Suspect, right?
One of my favorites.
Kaiser Soze turns around and he goes, right, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled, right, was convincing the world he didn't exist. Well,
That's
guess
right.
what? That motherfucker exists, all right?
Yeah.
And right now he's living over at Mar-a-Lardo, which, by the way, if one more
it's Bedminster, right? It's the summer now.
political asshole on television doesn't call Mar-a-Lardo what it is a club. It is not Donald's home, all right? Your home is where, it's not just where you live, it's he is a resident like anybody else that wants to stay. How he's able to stay there as long as he is, which is against the rules.
I was just going to say, isn't that against some rules?
Beach.
Yeah.
It is against the rules, but nevertheless, Donald doesn't acknowledge rules, and somehow or another rules don't apply to him. But it is not his home. It was the home of former Marjorie Merriweather Post that he ended up buying, all right, many years ago and converting into a social club. Plain and simple. And they have to stop showing it because it is a magnificent, magnificent property.
Yeah, right? It is. I've seen it. I've never been there. I've driven past it.
I would turn around and say it is a magnificent property. But it is a social club with hundreds of members, right? Hundreds of members. And I can't imagine the last time you had people over to your home to conduct a wedding, right? In your ballroom, right? And so on for a fee.
Just that whole setup, now that you bring it up, when you think about it, is so weird. That's weird. This guy is
He owns houses across the street, by the way.
Well,
Tara,
he has Trump Tower. He's got
Trump Tower.
Right,
He's got houses across the street from Mar-a-Lardo. Right. Literally across the street.
But my point is that the guy is so incapable of having normal social relationships that he can't just be home, like with his family and his wife whose name he forgets, and the son who he forgets he has. He can't just live a normal life like that. He has to surround himself with sycophants and ass kissers, and the adulation is his drug. And it's like he can't just be with his own family or with himself and just enjoy life. He's that miserable that he has to surround himself with strangers who are just, using him for, attention, for power, for access. And he goes and DJs random people's weddings. And like this is what brings him, I don't want to say joy because he doesn't seem capable of joy, but this is what brings him satisfaction, I guess. There's something wrong
when
with
he
this.
showed up, damn straight, when he showed up and he was invited to this wedding, he gets up onto the stage and respectfully, you have the former president of the United States. I mean, I wouldn't, want him making a speech, but then again, I wouldn't do it at Mar-a-Lago. But he gets up to make a speech. And instead of talking about the bride, how beautiful she looks, and the groom, what a handsome guy and what a beautiful couple, and that they should have many children together and a life of health, happiness, success, love, joy, nachas, as we like to say, right? In the Jewish tradition, for 120 years. No. No, here's the speech. They stole the election from us, folks. Quite frankly, right? They didn't just steal it from me. They stole it from all of us.
Mm-hmm.
All right? They stole it. And we have to fight back. We have to fight hard. And make sure you give money to the PAC. Right. I mean, it is so absolutely crazy and stupid and ridiculous. On brand.
Can I ask you, Michael, I've been meaning to ask you about this, because I told you, like, the genius of him turning it around, that when they come for me, they come for you. Did he come up with that? Who came up with that? Using that as the basic, the foundation for everything he's done. It feels like a little too intelligent for him to come up with, but did he come up with doing that, or was that someone else in his orbit?
I have no idea. Obviously, that's something that happened while I was nowhere near him or this group of people. But what Donald does,
I wonder that,
he
like,
engages.
Is that consistent with his thought process?
But he engages in many dialogues with many different people, and he absorbs what they say to him that benefits him and only him. Mm-hmm. So is it possible that somebody said that line to him and then he absorbs it and then makes it his own? Yeah. That's probably what happened. Yeah. But
sounds like something Steve Bannon would come up with. You know what I mean? It sounds like something Steve Bannon would come up with, because he's actually an evil genius. He's a piece of shit, but he's a smart guy. And his obsession with nationalist populism type of messaging.
I was going to say that it's very Hitler-esque.
Yes,
it's very Stalin-esque.
Yes,
they're coming after. They're not just coming after me. They're coming after you.
Right.
Make it personal to every single person. In that way, they become your warriors. But I want to ask you this: the DOJ is. I mean, they're just getting ready to bring another 30 to 45 additional charges against Trump under a superseding indictment that could legitimately bury him behind bars for the rest of his life if in fact he's found guilty. Now, Jack Smith is likely to bring them in different venues, as well as a means to an end to that runaround, of Judge Cannon if she shows undue deference to the former president. Now, the legal strategy thus far is how are they to execute this? Because it seems utterly flawless to me and really meant to ground Trump. I mean, it's just to grind him to dust and then really to deny him any cover. What do you make of Jack Smith so far? And how do you think that he's handled the case, or I should say the cases against Trump?
I've been very impressed with Jack Smith, and he's a no-nonsense guy. And I think Trump has finally met his match here, because the fate of his future rests in Jack Smith's ability to bring this case. And so far, he has done it rather quickly. He's done it flawlessly, to use your point, by laying things out very clearly. I think Jack Smith learned from the mistakes of the Mueller investigation and the Mueller team. And, he's been to this rodeo before. People have to understand that Jack Smith isn't just some random guy. I mean, he's one of the best. He's taken down war criminals, for God's sakes. The guy is not to be fucked with. And the way that he has executed this so far, I think, has been beyond above reproach. And the fact that they are literally playing, 4-dimensional, 3-dimensional chess, because they have a backup for the backup for the backup, which those of us who are watching this from the outside, we have no idea what's going on inside Jack Smith's team and what their strategy is. But it's clear that their strategy is multifaceted, that they are using the art of war and surrounding the enemy and going in for the attack. And the idea that they would bring even more superseding indictments, I think, gives aid and comfort to those of us who have been watching Donald Trump's professional life of criming. He's done so many things, and just take away, like, you know, all the things he's done decades prior to this, but just the things from, you know, January 6th and now that, you know, the documents case, just those things alone are so outrageous that it's clear that Jack Smith is leaving no stone unturned. And I'm encouraged by that. I know a lot of people have been very frustrated by Merrick Garland and the slow pace of the DOJ.
I am.
And right. It's frustrating. I get it. And I think Merrick Garland, coming from a judge, is, you know, he's a judge. That's his background. He was never a prosecutor like that. And so I think that he overcorrected by trying to appear fair and non-political. There was an overcorrection here. Maybe we'll see in the long run that was the right thing to do. And I think you have to be very careful after the way the Trump DOJ was politicized and corrupted. So I think they just overcorrected there.
I'm so sorry. Why do you have to be careful, considering no one from the DOJ has been held accountable for shit? All right, Bill Maher,
True.
that bloviated dirtbag motherfucker. All right. Instead, now he goes on television on CNN, hanging out with the likes of all of their hosts, talking about, well, I told Donald that he lost the election. Okay, welcome back to polite society, you scumbag.
Yeah.
All right, or
add Chris
going
Christie
on and
to that
turning
list.
around and saying, say it again.
I said you can add Chris Christie to that list of people who all of a sudden we're supposed to, because he's saying the right things now, we're supposed to forget what he did to get us to this situation in the first place. So I hear you on that.
Now you got Bill Maher that's standing up there.
Yeah.
The mistake Merrick Garland is making, and then I'm going to let you finish your thought, but the mistake Merrick Garland is making, time is not on our side.
You're right.
I wish to God I can have that made into a sign and send it to him and send it to Joe Biden. Listen, who's going to end up eating shit for all of the mistakes that Merrick Garland is making by being the slow, methodical, thoughtful, judicious, individual that he pretends to be? Joe Biden. And there are Democrats that are angry at Biden, and Republicans are angry at him because Donald has somehow managed to use the time period to figure out how to make himself into the victim.
Yes. No, I don't disagree with that. And the conservative part of me that wants to be prudent when it comes to certain institutions is still, there's a struggle with that, where I'm like, at first I was like, I'm like, look, they need to go after Donald Trump immediately, day one, and have his ass indicted in a trial in the first year, But then the other side of me is like, yes, but we don't want to become what we despise. You don't want to seem overly political with the Department of Justice, and you need to let them do what they do. But there has to be a happy medium, right? There's got to be something in between. Because to your point, time is not on our side. And we're not dealing with good faith actors on the other side. These people have no respect for the rule of law, no respect for the judiciary, no respect for the process in this country. And so they're taking advantage. When the other side doesn't respect the rules, the other side has the advantage because you're playing by a certain rule and they're not playing by those rules. So what do you do? And I think that there's been a struggle for sure with Merrick Garland. I think Merrick Garland's a good and decent man. I think he's well-intentioned, but I think he's been outmaneuvered a few times too many by the Trumps, by the MAGA side.
I'm not.
But Jack Smith is not. But my point is Jack Smith is not. So thank God, the best thing Merrick Garland ever did was pick Jack Smith.
Right. See, I'm not casting any denigrations upon Merrick Garland.
Yeah, no, I know you're not.
Intentions or the type of person that he is. I'm sure he's a wonderful guy.
Yeah, he's just being outmaneuvered.
The problem is he's the wrong person for the AG's job today, right? That to me
There's
is
an argument
just
to be made
accurate.
for that, sure.
All right.
Yeah,
and
you need to be more aggressive.
And it's a real problem because Trump knows how to take advantage of situations. And I'll tell you, who I give a lot of credit to? I give a lot of credit to Alvin Bragg. I give a lot of credit to Tish James. They came right out and they said, now, look, I was also very critical of Alvin Bragg. This
he
case
didn't come out right away.
That's right. He delayed it a year post what Mark Pomerantz, who was the lead prosecutor, thought was ready, to be filed.
Yep.
Could you imagine if that's right? But could you imagine if Alvin Bragg on day one would have listened to Mark Pomerantz? How much further along we would be? And I just had recently Michael Smerconish on my show as well. And I spoke to Smerconish, and I have so much respect. I think he's great in every way, shape, or form.
The best. He lets me
really
guest host his show,
great.
which is a quite the honor. I'll be guest hosting August 4th, by the way. So, but yes,
right,
I adore
I'll
Michael.
be on. So, and he's fantastic. But we have a massive disagreement. He thinks that Alvin Bragg should not have brought this case first. That in the minds of Americans, that it diminishes Jack Smith's two cases, the January 6th insurrection, as well as the Mar-a-Lago document case. And I say I don't see it that way. In fact, if it was you, Tara, and like I said to Smerconish, if it was you who did what Trump did in the Alvin Bragg case, you'd be locked up already. You would have been indicted, you would have been tried, you would have been convicted, and you would have been sentenced already. Why does Trump get a pass? Because he's committed so many worse offenses? This is the Al Capone theory. They didn't get him on murder, extortion, racketeering, bootlegging, blah, 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 blah. They got him on tax evasion.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit? There are so many people in America that probably like 7 out of 10 Americans want to see Trump held accountable. And you know what? For something is right. Now, look, I want to go to a different area here because you recently went on MSNBC to discuss how the rallying around Trump is not because of his economics, but instead the polarizing othering that he exploits. He and his base betray what the Republican Party has historically stood for. So I'm curious, Tara, if you believe that there is a way back to the party of Lincoln for the GOP, and if so, how the fuck do they even get there? How do they get there when you have Donald Trump with that big ass, standing in front of a door, not letting it open or not letting anybody pass?
Yeah. Well, that you pulled that from a segment I was on with Michael Steele and my good friend Rena Shah, both very, very close personal friends of mine. I've known Michael for over 20 years, almost 25 years now. Good gosh. And I've known Rena for many years. And we have a fundamental disagreement about whether the Republican Party can be saved. Michael was instrumental in keeping me in the party through the Trump administration, believing that we as the sane people could make a difference once he's out of there, that we could help the party course correct, because if all the sane people leave, then only the crazies are left. And there were several times during the Trump administration where I was like, I'm done. And he talked me off the ledge to say, come on, let's stick it out and try to keep them, hold them accountable from within the party. And I said, okay, fine. But then after, and many people know the story, if they follow me, they know that after Trump refused to concede the election and just disgraced that critically important cornerstone of our democracy, the peaceful transfer of power, I said, I've had it, because it was clear to me that there was nothing Trump could do that would make the Republican leadership stand up and say enough is enough, even if it meant causing a constitutional crisis. So I believe firmly, and Michael's still in the party, and God bless him, and I wish him luck with that. I don't know for how much longer, to be honest, but you have to ask him. You got to get him on the show. I'm sure he's been on with you before, yes?
I did. He was on a week ago.
I bust his chops all the time about this, and so it's kind of an ongoing joke with us. But I think that he's reconsidering whether it can be saved also. And Rena is someone else who believes that she can try to make a difference from within. And I wholeheartedly disagree at this point. The Republican Party should be burned to the ground. They have violated every possible principle, every foundational principle that the party stood for 160 years. And it's as long as you have people who are despicable sycophants and ass kissers like Lindsey Graham and Kevin McCarthy and people like Marjorie Trailer Trash Green and Lauren Boebert and these morons, the Matt Gaetz of the world, as long as you have these people elevated in the Republican Party and the leadership too chicken shit to stand up and say enough is enough, the party is doomed to destroy itself. It's been on a path to destruction since Donald Trump came down the escalator and the party leadership allowed him to get away with all of his shit from the beginning, from insulting John McCain and his service to all the litany of other things that followed after that. Once they let that cancer in, it's been a wrap. The malignancy of this has metastasized through the entire body of the Republican Party, and it cannot be saved. So I don't think so. I think that the party has to continue to get its ass kicked definitively at the polls. The fact that Donald Trump, even though he lost in 2020, Republicans gained seats in the House and 74 million plus people voted for this motherfucker. It was not a repudiation of Donald Trump or of MAGA or Republicans. It was not. It was a split decision. Yes, he was defeated, but MAGA has become mainstream. That is our fight. We have to make sure that MAGA is defeated because MAGA and the Republicans are no longer, they're indistinguishable at this point. I know that the Biden administration is trying to say, oh, the MAGA, ultra MAGA Republican, but fuck all that, okay? The Republican Party is MAGA, period. There is no distinguishing it. And the handful of people who are tiptoeing around it trying to, say, oh, well, we need to win elections and we need to do this. And no, you need to take this on. If you're serious about trying to wrestle the party back from this, then you have to do I'm very critical of Chris Christie, but you have to do what Chris Christie's doing. If they were all doing that, and if leadership was doing that and calling it out straight and calling Trump out for what he's doing and calling out the party luminaries for, not standing up to it, then maybe there'd be a chance. But Chris Christie's on an island. And so, there's no appetite for this in the party.
They tune him out.
Exactly. There's no appetite for it.
They tune him out the same way that they tune out the Lincoln Project. You're not going to get a Republican saying, oh my God, you know what? I listened to Tara. I was listening to Rick Wilson. The Lincoln Project put out this great ad. Michael Cohen. I have been screaming from the fucking rooftops now for how many years?
Me too.
Turning around and calling out Donald Trump for exactly what he is. But despite the twice impeached, twice indicted, soon to be thrice indicted, sexually, assaulter, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Right? With everything that we're hearing about Donald, right? Not only is he leading the poll, but he's fucking raking in the money in historic amounts. So you're right. The GOP has become MAGA. They are MAGA. They are one in the same. But I'll tell you, another guy who actually slams Trump and the rest of these, you can't get rid of Ron DeSanctimonious or Ron DeSnotnose or Ron DeSatan or whatever, you want to call this guy. But Pete Buttigieg recently, he just body slammed this asshole, right, with a quip. That included him commenting on DeSantis' choice of campaign videos. And, Buttigieg said, and I'm going to quote, I'm going to leave aside the strangeness of trying to prove your manhood by putting up a video that splices images of you in between oiled up shirtless bodybuilders. And then Buttigieg goes on to ask, right, what with real problems are you trying to solve? And to me, that gets to the crux of the problem that we now see with these MAGA conservatives. They are uninterested. They are fucking disinterested. I want to say it again. They are fucking disinterested in solving the everyday kitchen sink issues that voters truly care about. But instead, all they want to do is lean into anger and hate and divisiveness through wokeism and through anti-LGBTQ initiatives and QAnon and attacking Black history and on and on and on, right? Because it almost feels like that they're governing another country that has little to do with what we as Americans truly care about. What's your opinion on this?
You're 1,000% right. It's watching what they're doing. I call it Counter Earth. If anybody's ever seen a Marvel movie, an Ant-Man, where they talk about Counter Earth, it's some people call it Earth 2, right? It's not this Earth. It's not this country. Like, I don't know what world these people are living in. They've created this very strange, dysfunctional
Bizarro
hellscape,
land.
Right? Yeah, this like upside down world. But these people, they've convinced millions of people that that's what the reality is, and it's so not. And every day I'm encouraged, though, when I go across the country, and like we just had 4th of July pass by, and I was at our local 4th of July parade, parades are a big tradition in my family because my grandfather marched in our hometown parade every year from 1947 until 2016, when he was literally wheeled in his wheelchair by the police department, of which he served 40 years with and 70 years with the fire department. So very strong hometown roots. They literally wheeled him in his wheelchair at 90 years old down the parade route in 2016, and he passed away 10 days later. So it was parades are, especially 4th of July parades, are very near and dear to me. And I was at our 4th of July parade here where I live in Northern Virginia. And I was just watching and looking around and taking it all in and saying, like, it was a very diverse parade, and everyone was getting along, and the kids were running around, everyone was waving their flags. And I saw a little girl, this beautiful little girl, biracial like me. So I'm a little more sensitive to that. And she had her flag. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. And she was standing. And as one of the floats came down, it was an LGBTQ float with military veterans. So they had American flags, they had pride flags, they had, military flags, and to show that, we're all Americans here. And that little girl was standing there waving her flag at that float as it went by. And that really touched me as a truly American scene of where we are in 2023. Like, there are so many more
I
of
have
us
goosebumps. I have goosebumps right now.
Right. I should post it. I'm going to post a
Yeah.
picture on my Instagram and Twitter. And by the way, I just joined Threads, which is amazing. Everyone go follow me over.
By the way,
Threads.
so did I.
It's amazing.
So did I. I'm on. I did that. Yeah. Yes. I couldn't believe. I couldn't believe it. It was fantastic. But
anyway, so
when
I'll
it comes
post
to this thing with
it.
Threads,
But
thank goodness.
I know. Thank God. I mean, I hate to give praise to Mark Zuckerberg because he's been whatever. But you know what? Good for him, and I'm here for it as long as it doesn't turn into the hellscape that Twitter
alternative.
is. But anyway, so I look at all of this and I say to myself, people like Ron DeSantis, who's another just Napoleonic complex, insecure jerk off that is awkward. He can't stand people. And he's the more people are exposed to him, the more they don't like him. His poll numbers have gone down. And he posts something like that, which was so bizarre. And Pete Buttigieg, I hope is president one day. I'll be the first to support him. I think he's fantastic and would be a fantastic president. And he just do
you think the country would ever elect a gay president?
I think it may. I mean, that's the challenge. But I think, yes, our country would at this point. As hard as Republicans and the right wing is trying to demonize gay people in this country, that's not where our culture is going. It's not. There is a much larger culture of acceptance. And so and Pete Buttigieg, I think, is the bridge that could, he's the kind of guy that could bridge that gap, I think. Military service, Midwest guy, well-spoken, smart as a whip. So I hope so. I mean, if we elected a black guy in this country, I think we might be able to elect a gay man.
Totally different. Totally different, in my opinion.
I don't know,
especially in light of the Supreme Court's recent decisions. I'm not so sure. And who knows what else the Supreme Court. As far as I'm concerned, I see Ron DeSantis the same way I see Donald Trump, the same way I see Ted Cruz and others. I see them, they're all the same. It's all about white privilege.
100%.
Right? When you start bringing up Lauren Boebert, you bring up Marjorie Toilet Greene, and so on. What do they all have in common? All right. It's all about white privilege and keeping it to yourself. And I'm going to tell you, you brought up something interesting about DeSantis. All right. You may remember in this town hall interview that DeSantis was having, a high school student, high school student with more, as we like to say in Yiddish, with more seichel, with more brains than this fucking idiot who happens to be incredibly well educated.
Yeah, he's
Don't get
Ivy
me
League
wrong.
educated.
DeSantis, I mean, he's Ivy League educated. A fucking high school student asks him what his thoughts are about Trump's role in the January 6th insurrection, where DeSantis responds, and I quote, "I wasn't anywhere near Washington that day, and we have to move forward." Do you believe, like I do, that it showed DeSantis' real weakness and that he will crumble under direct scrutiny on a debate stage? A high school student asked him a poignant, a brilliant question. So good for that student. Asks him a poignant question, and he crumbled like the snowflake that he is. You agree with what I'm saying? Absolutely.
Rick Wilson and I have been saying this for over a year on our show, the breakdown that we do, the live stream show for the Lincoln Project. And I've been saying this on cable news for over a year and a half now, that Ron DeSantis has a political glass chin. And it was evidenced during his campaign debate against Charlie Crist, for goodness sakes, where Crist asked him a simple question that should have been yes or no. It was about whether he would commit to serving his 4 years as governor in his second term, because everybody knew that he really just wanted to use that as a springboard to run for president. And he looked like he got hit with a Mike Tyson haymaker. And so that was a prelude to any time. And you see, anytime anyone challenges him, particularly women, challenge him in the media, when reporters ask him tough questions, or he gets real snotty and bitchy and he can't help it. And he's so condescending. And even though Ron DeSanctimonious is a mouthful, it actually is quite true. He is a sanctimonious prick. And the more people are exposed to him, which we warned about, Rick and I always joke about, we are sick of being right. This is something else that we've been right about. The more people, we predicted this, the more people who were exposed to Ron DeSantis on the campaign trail, the more they would dislike him, because he is a jerk. He's socially awkward. He is sanctimonious. He's condescending as hell, and he cannot take a political punch. A high school kid rattled this guy. A high school kid which should have been a softball down the middle question, fastball down the middle, right over the plate. Very simple. How do you feel about January 6th? I wasn't anywhere near there. What the fuck kind of answer is that? Were you not paying attention? It was one of the most horrific days in American history, up there with 9/11 and, and like World War II. Like, I wasn't there. What a weak answer. He is a weakling, this guy.
Could you imagine you ask him a question? So what did you think of this Aaron? Aaron DeSnotnose. What did you think of the issue of the Civil War?
Right.
I wasn't there.
I wasn't there.
We should move on.
Right.
I wasn't there. And so really?
Pathetic.
Really? You weren't
pathetic.
there? Did you not watch it like everybody else on television?
Exactly. Were you not upset
you think
by
that
it?
there's another? Come on.
Right. Like, how do you not have an opinion?
Police officers have passed. You don't have an opinion?
Right. I mean, it's just, again, it's infuriating. And the cowardice, just the absolute cowardice of someone like him, who tries to portray himself as this big tough guy, blah, 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 with this ridiculous toxic masculinity that he tries to portray, when he's really just a sad, weak little boy who can't take a position on something like, a violent insurrection against our U.S. Capitol to try to overturn the government.
Yeah, it's a problem.
That's disqualifying. That tells me that you're going to be a bitch ass anytime someone challenges you, and you want me to hand the keys over to the presidency to you.
Okay, I don't know. We're doing the same thing for Trump. But look,
I agree.
The hour goes by very quickly.
It does.
I have one last question for you, because you recently wrote about the reaction to the Supreme Court's latest decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I quote, "If you're upset about SCOTUS decisions lately, let it be a reminder. Presidential elections have consequences. This is what voters bought when they elected Trump in 2016. The GOP has always been better at playing the long game regarding SCOTUS, and Democrats need to make an issue in 2024. If you would, unpack what you meant here for my listeners. Me personally, and I say this all the time, I don't understand why Biden doesn't just put an additional 4 people onto the Supreme Court. Just do it. Just do it. That's what Trump would do. And let's get some reality back into a court whose reputation has been so badly tarnished.
Yeah, the court packing issue is one that has it pops up every once in a while when there's Supreme Court cases that don't go the way that some people want. This is the first time we've really encountered a Supreme Court dynamic like we see right now, which is openly hostile to so many settled law questions. And it's alarming. I personally, again, this is the conservative side of me that doesn't like too much change to our institutions. And I worry that if Biden does it, then the next Republican president comes in and then they do it. And then where do you draw the line? So I worry about that. So I'm not on board with just adding a couple more Supreme Court justices to it. What I think is more appropriate is that we are responsible as citizens. We are responsible for the democracy that we have. And we have got to continue to educate people, get them to pay attention, and recognize that there are consequences to elections. And elections only function and the results happen as a result of who gets out and votes. And I've said this to you before, and I say this repeatedly. I firmly believe that there are more of us than there are of them. And as long as we mobilize and inspire and empower people to recognize what's at stake, then the good guys will win. And it may not happen fast enough for some folks, and I get that, but we always have to remember what happens after, right? What happens when the next people get in charge? Look at what Republicans did when they won the House back. We have to be careful what traditions and what institutions we take. If we take it a step too far, the next ones may take it even further, and then what? So that's why I'm not completely on board with adding more justices. But what we need to do, we have an opportunity to reelect a president that understands those institutions, that respects them, that respects our democracy. I know he's not ideal for everyone, but you've got to look at this is what happens when you play around and say, well, he upset me because we didn't get student loan forgiveness, and fuck all that. Okay. I understand it's important, but the president of the United States can't just, wipe away student loan debt. There's a process. So he tried, and it was struck down. Don't penalize him for making the effort and it not working in the system. Get it? You know what? Elect more people to Congress, elect more senators who are in agreement with you. Don't just, tap out and say, I'm forget it. No, the single issue for every voter should be, what's at stake for our democracy continuing? Do you want us to continue or not?
Nah, that's not what they're thinking anymore.
It's not, but it needs to be, because people don't understand the consequences. And that's why I use the example of what's happening with Supreme Court.
Everyone's only thinking with their pocketbook.
Well, that's important too. That's important too, but none of that matters though if we are no longer in a free market, open society. It doesn't matter, because guess what? Then the economy will tank. Because we are the leaders of the world. And if this kind of shit happens over here, guess what? We won't be anymore, and China will be. Is that what we want? So I really, something else I tweeted recently too was, I implore my Democratic friends to stop denigrating Biden, stop talking about his age, stop talking about alternatives, and focus on his accomplishments, what he has done for this country, what he will continue to do, what he has done for the American people, and contrast that with the alternative. Get a unified message. That's what Republicans do. They're very good at it. It doesn't matter what you ask them. They stay on message. Democrats need to learn how to do that, and they will win. Yes, thank you. And every other Thursday on the breakdown with Lincoln Project. So make sure you follow us on all the Lincoln Project pages and me on social media as well. And I'm on MSNBC a lot too, so you can catch me over there. But thank you, Michael. It's always a pleasure. I love you, my friend.